So before we get on with this review, I will say one thing. Galax decided this time around, for whatever reason with their 1070 Ti, the EX-SNPR, to make it in a off-white. And now I'm not the only one who has experienced this. Greg over at Science Studio made a whole video dedicated towards how the aesthetic was a little bit misleading, especially when they put on white on their website. Though for me personally, aesthetic hasn't been the biggest reason to buy, especially a graphics card. For me personally, performance and of course value for money are the two things I look for when buying a graphics card. And so does the EX-SNPR have those two qualities? Well, today we're going to be comparing it against not only the 1080 Ti, but also the 1070 Ti Hall of Fame, and seeing what the differences are between these two cards. Welcome back to Tech Yes City. In this 1070 Ti SNPR here, we're going to pull up some benchmarks, but first we'll pull up the overclocks because this is the best overclock I've seen out of a 1070 Ti, but not only that, also the best overclock on air that I've seen out of a 10 series card to date. This thing got over 2,100 megahertz and even clocked higher than that of the 1070 Ti Hall of Fame that I have here. Now, of course, Galax could have sent me out a very good sample, but there's also another thing that happened with these overclocks, and that is before I started testing the card, I actually took it apart and took some B-roll of the VRM, which you can see is it's got a fatter PCB. It's also a well-designed card. I think it's a 6+ 2-phase power design they're using here. But also I changed the thermal paste around and I used a different thermal paste. So unfortunately I couldn't get the stock temperatures and I didn't think anything of it at the time. But I believe this thermal paste made actually quite a big difference. At least when I compare my numbers to Greg's, this card was performing phenomenally well. The max load temperatures, even when overclocked to over 2,100 megahertz, was still staying in the low 70s. And that's on the auto fan speeds. When we put the fan speeds up to 100%, this thing really responded well. So it is a phenomenal card in that the sense that Galax do put a really good cooler on this graphics card itself. There's also a steel backplate that does share the same off-white scheme as the metal shroud itself. Though you may also notice that there's a light bar wedged in between the steel backplate and the PCB. This is RGB and you can change this within Galax's own software itself. In Galax's own software, there's also the option for preset overclocks, 3 and 5%, and also a silent mode as well if you need this card completely silent while you're gaming. Also the options to change fan speeds, voltages, and clock speeds, just like MSI Afterburner would, but of course for overclocking, I still do use MSI Afterburner. Though pulling up some gaming benchmarks for you guys, first up we have Kingdom Come Deliverance, 1440p max settings. I believe the 1070 Ti SNPR will do very well at 1440p gaming, of course, deliberately stressing those settings to max out the GPU itself to 100%. We can see that it does fall behind a 1080 Ti, that's of course to be expected, but overclocked, this thing was just beating out the Hall of Fame. And as I said before, I believe I got a really good sample here with the 1070 Ti and also that thermal paste making a difference, but I will be making a video on that in the later coming days. And now moving over to PUBG here, we see nothing out of the ordinary, 0.1% and 1% lows are as expected, and also the overclock is making around about a 10% difference to the performance of this card. It's also just slightly again beating out the 1070 Ti Hall of Fame, since essentially they do carry the exact same GPU die. As for Singularity now in crazy 1440p settings, I just decided to use the inbuilt benchmark which spits out an average FPS for you guys. You can see here 65 FPS as opposed to 72 when it's overclocked, and also just slightly ahead of the 1070 Ti Hall of Fame. And moving on with Final Fantasy 15 1440p high settings, I personally notice absolutely no difference between high and ultra settings, but ultra really taxes the graphics card to a different level. I think it's unplayable even on a 1080 Ti, just the stuttering, but even on the high settings, one interesting note that came out of this was the 0.1% lows on the 1070 Ti. When it wasn't overclocked, it did get quite a sizable drop. As opposed to being overclocked, it was a lot smoother. Same with the 1070 Ti Hall of Fame. They scored similar in this benchmark. And then moving over now to the last benchmark, we're going to pull up 1440p GTA 5. This is the pretty much max settings I could put on this. Very high settings at 1440p. We saw again roughly a 10% increase in the amount of frames, but nothing was really out of the ordinary in terms of 0.1% and 1% lows. Also just slightly again beating out the 1070 Ti Hall of Fame. Then when it comes down to it, Galax cards hit very hard in terms of price performance. The value you're getting, at least with the EX-SNPR series, is really good. at least in Australia. When we move over to the US, however, they do only have their cards for sale on the Galax store. As I've said in the past, I would like to see them branch out to Amazon.com, as I believe like over half of Americans buy all their stuff from this website. So there is that factor that probably would put some people off. However, they do have a pretty good deal on the 1070 Ti Sniper and also a mechanical keyboard on their website, which I thought wasn't too shabby, considering I do have this keyboard here, and it is very nice, especially for a $30 premium over the 1070 Ti standalone. Galax also sent over a RAM stick, which has a RGB light bar on it too, so pretty cool. They've also got an SSD, which does have a good aesthetic as well. So it looks like they do want to branch into other markets, not just graphics cards. And I must admit, if they can get the aesthetic right, which in this case, with the off-white, they did get it a little bit off. If they can stick to just making it pure white, like this 1080 Ti here, then I think they will be hitting hard and they will continue to grow their market share. Though every card that's come through here from Galax has been really good value for money, except for the Hall of Fame, which is more of a premium option for people who need that massive triple slot cooler and also that extra 11% on the overclocking headroom with the power limit, and of course that 8+3 phase power design. But when it comes down to value for money, the EX-SNPR series is definitely delivering. Of course, I don't know what happened with the aesthetic this time around, especially when I've got the 1080 Ti here, which has that pure white aesthetic. Also another thing as well, the RGB only extends to the light bar. Even though the fans light up, they've only got white LEDs in them. So I would like to see Galax perhaps get that shroud back to a pure white and also make the lights on the fans themselves RGB too. That would be very cool. Love to see that. But in terms of value for money, great card. And if you guys enjoyed this review, then be sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comment section below if you've got any comments about the off-white Sniper EX graphics card. And I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye. And I might as well just throw this in the blooper reel. Needs an 8+6 pin, and you've got 3 DisplayPort 1.4s and 1 HDMI 2.0B and 1 dual link DVI out. Absolutely amazing cooling solution, or want that 8+3 pair. Had a brain fart mid-review, oh god. Because every Galax card. Also, one more thing I forgot to mention, this PCB is fatter than a reference PCB, weighs in at 900 grams, and the 1070 Ti Hall of Fame weighs in at 1.3 kilograms. Moving on to Final Fantasy 15. This is a GPU focused test. We can see here we've only got an average. What is that?